One wonders what the phrase, all the rage, really means. Or at least I do. It's supposed to mean whatever is popular. But my mind automatically connects rage with outrage, and outrage with controversy. The idea that there is no such thing as bad publicity seems to be built into the very fabric of our human expression, at least in the West. Most just take for granted that it seems to make certain people really pissy all the time, that people and businesses are canceled, books burned, while creepy male feminists blow angry snot bubbles in their soy milk. It would seem, with the way the word is bandied about, that it was this ephemeral quintessence of moral degradation. Yet there are more than enough people who simply just can't get enough of it. So much so that it sells more books and subscriptions and keeps more people's eyes plastered to the screen, as if the people were goldfish staring out of their fish tanks. For hating it so much, many seem to entirely love it, and sometimes these two expressions can be found in the same person. This is most certainly not always the case, and some tend to just walk away. I would applaud their integrity, except they may not be doing so for the reasons they believe. Some would think that the very portrayal of something they don't approve of is as good as advocacy, though it would be very simple to argue the opposite. For others, something can't be portrayed unless the characters in the story pay for their actions, a perceived moral turpitude. The viewer might be upset when the entire cast does not contract venereal disease or die of a marijuana overdose. Yet it is always lost on the offended parties who have convinced themselves that they advocate against certain activities, even as they themselves will passively participate in them because they turn a blind eye to the individuals in their own social communities doing the exact same things. It is the individuals who rant about justice the most that commit most of the injustices. It is often the people who rant against controversies who make them into such themselves. The problem is that while some will find any excuse to be offended, as long as one group is blamed for any crises on earth, while excluding others who are equally or even more responsible, controversy has been used for more destruction than the endorphin and cortisol-fueled mania of vampiric social media. Users who, like heroin addicts, are constantly pulled between the euphoria of social recognition and public approval and the fear of an Armageddon destruction, while those who see through the smoke and mirrors, who rebel and speak out counter to the narrative, are silenced. Meanwhile, the consumer's data is sold to corporations and foreign nations because it is the user that is the product, not the platform. Ultimately, what is lost is that fear is the mind killer, as is anger. The fear and the anger used to control, both of which they feed to their unwitting users to convert them into thoughtless cattle. It's all simple human psychology. When you aren't thinking, you aren't functional. When you seek out battles with others that do not exist already, you are at war with yourself. When you are at war with yourself, you are easy prey. Thereafter, you're skinned, gutted, aged, cleft apart, and distributed amongst your masters to feed the power hunt. This is not to imply that there is nothing worthy of anger when the innocent are violated, when something is taken from them that can never be returned. It is certainly cause for anger. Yet oftentimes, very few know the full story and will latch on to any narrative that confirms their prejudice. No evidence required. Just repeating it makes it so, you know. Such blind spots in the human psyche can often result in the execution of an innocent or the sainthood of a murderer, and one might never know unless they themselves witness it. Such realities have to make us stop and wonder, what is controversy? Which requires the individual to be willing to let go of their preconceived notions, and even more importantly, inquire further. Where is the con? When our egos have become so sensitive that anything can be considered offensive by one individual or another, then the rights of the individual are eliminated for the power of the rulers in the name of the collective for the sake of control. When everything is offensive, then the world is made up only of enemies and victims. This phenomenon is a symptom of the infantilization of the planet. But it has been happening for a very long time. Let me tell you, if you've worked in retail, you'll see the symptoms of the disease, and it's enough to be disappointed in the human race when the 50-year-old parents are the children in the household, and their adolescent offspring are acting like adults, while colleges are filled with doctorate students who want their safe spaces and throw temper tantrums because they never had to face challenges and were awarded participation trophies just for showing up. Somehow people are awarded victimhood awards like medals just because they decided to be offended. Instead of enabling justice for real victims, their act diminishes the punishment of any crime for everyone except actual innocence. So then, what is controversy? It's a con. If this answer is too terse for your sensibilities, consider this exploration. The expression con man is short for confidence man, coined to describe a grifter who would convince strangers of their mutual acquaintance, then proceed to borrow the stranger's belongings, never to return. But the negative connotation for the word con dated back much further. While the prefix con is supposed to mean to bring together in Latin, the definition for the word assurance based on insufficient grounds dates back to the 16th century and the inception of modern English. Even before this, in Middle English, the language of Geoffrey Chaucer, another definition was an argument against, such as pros and cons, whereas in the French it would mean to lead. One might easily assume that the implication is that to lead and to bring together was perceived as being negative by some, because a public that is united is more difficult to conquer. Furthermore, it implied that even attributes such as confidence, conscience, or conservation were themselves an evil, and the reasonable person might be easily forgiven if they theorize that some who helped shape our language hated us. But the strange mirroring of definitions does not end there. The prefix a, as in atheist, means no or an absence of. So then how is it that asleep means sleeping and not no sleep? Or that the word awake means wakened and not wakened? With this in mind, it would be easy to assume that constituents were suspect, that confiding was the act of a fool, and that even the act of conception was a burden to be avoided. While English is made up of many languages cobbled together, an entire book could be written on this phenomenon of contradicting meanings. One final example I will give concerns the words positive and negative. The root word for positive is posit, which means to theorize, and for negative, the root word is negate, which means to dismiss, implying that what is positive is not proven, but that the dismissal of said theory is negative. Is it possible then to conclude that the word positive suggests only the possibility of, while the word negative dismisses that possibility altogether? That positivity seems while negativity is? Just consider how our language helps shape our human experience and our belief system. So then how might a language divided against itself influence us on how to perceive the world? It would then appear that controversy is one big con, that even the DNA of our own language is a conspiracy against us. It would be all too easy to assume that it is simply a coincidence. Perhaps that's just a lazy excuse to allow others to think for you. But coincidence is the explanation of one who has shut off their mind, and the root of such simple-minded explanations delve much deeper than laziness. It is caused by unconscious fear that disguises itself as apathy. Sometimes it feels safer to shut off your brain. If that is how you choose to live your life, then I promise, if you continue to listen, you will choose to be offended sooner or later. Being offended is a choice. I would rather choose to speak my mind and be thought of as a crackpot than to conform to the folly of those who prefer not to know. Because ignorance is not bliss. Most of the suffering in the world is caused by those who would rather not know, and those who blindly and desperately believe that they do. The reality is that there is no controversy, only children. So then, who are these rulers who try to stir up undue anger? If you have been the victim of a misunderstanding, you know that there are plenty of people who do not listen even as they interpret. I am not speaking of them. Instead, I am speaking of people who left behind those hidden markers in our mother tongue. So then let me ask you, who are the people who rule you? Who are the people that you are not permitted to criticize? So tell me, how might you better respond to that con called controversy in the future? Leave your comments below. If you enjoyed this episode, feel free to smack that like button. Everybody says it, and it's true. It helps the algorithm and ensures more people see it. Yada, yada, yada. But it would be very much appreciated if you really like, subscribe and hit the bell notification, and share it with friends and enemies. Or you can do all of them. I'm also on Odyssey, BitChute, and Rumble. For those interested in donating, I'm on Patreon, Subscribestar, and Ko-fi. For a one-time donation, I have a PayPal account as well. These are all listed in the description box below. Have a wonderful afternoon, evening, or morning, wherever and whenever you are. Just remember, climb the mountain or be crushed by it.